Hi, I'm Scott McWhinnie, animator at Illumination Mac Guff and Instructor at AnimSchool. Uh, Welcome, and I hope you enjoy our little discussion about me and my journey through animation. Enjoy. I went to high school in Sarasota, Florida, where Ringling is. And so I originally wanted to do like comic strips and things like that, but I quickly realized that like that wasn't a thing. And like internet comics weren't super popular yet. So I decided I wanted to do animation. And everyone just told me to go to Ringling because it was like down the street. And so I uh, went there for CG animation, but I ultimately really enjoyed 2D animation or like fantasized about being a 2D animator, not having the drawing skills. So when I was at Ringling, I interned at Sony ImageWorks in Culver City. And then upon graduating, I went to a little studio in Louisiana called Moonbot, where we did all kinds of different stuff, not just like short films or video games, but pretty much everything. Some people were even doing books and stuff and things like that. Um, and then I did a little stint at Bue Sky Studios as a temp on Rio 2. After that, did some freelance stuff in New York, went down to Dallas, actually got to do some 2D stuff at Brazen Animation, and then went back up to Bue Sky for about 5 years. And then right before the pandemic, I was working remotely for Little Zoo as an animator, while I was trying to do a little bit of traveling before the pandemic got into the full swing. Then was with Little Zoo for about a year, and then recently finished up on Hotel Transylvania 4 with Sony, and now I'm in Paris at Mac Guff doing some animation here. So that's all. That's pretty much all the stuff. Your typical animator, million jobs throughout the industry. Well, I think like for me, I think if you want to stay put, you can find a way. Like if that's your priority, there's plenty of jobs that allow you to stay relatively stable. It's just going to matter if it lines up with what you want to do in animation. For me, I always wanted to work in feature, so that was a big part of moving around and trying to find where to go. But for me, also moving around has been my kind of life. My dad was a pastor, so we moved about every 2 or 3 years on average. So it was just kind of normal to move, so it wasn't really that big a deal. It actually feels weird when I stay in one place for more than 5 years. Kind of go, what? What's happening? Because I'm not used to that. So for me, it's like normal life, I guess. But yeah, it is very common in the industry, but I don't think it has to be if you don't want it to be. You can find ways to stay put if that's your priority, main priority. Like, I was looking to go down to Florida and I was like, okay, I'm going to get a job doing the Jumbotron animations for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it's like, that's still in the animation field, not exactly what I wanted to do. But if that was my priority to be there, then I would take that job, which would be a much more stable long-term job because that franchise is not going anywhere. Yeah, it's kind of what kind of sacrifices are you willing to make? If you want to be a top level feature film animator and you want to live in Kansas, that's probably not going to happen. You have to pick or choose. Yeah. So, I mean, I think obviously like the main sort of big differences between a traditional school, I guess, and an online school, the main differences I think are the pros and cons of each. So obviously it's much more economical and affordable to do online classes, which is great because you don't feel sort of, if you get into a lot of debt at a traditional school, which isn't necessarily you like always have to, there are ways to alleviate that stress, but it does kind of handcuff you a bit in the future. So that can be a con for traditional schools. Then also being a pro for schools. I'd say another pro that I always thought would be great for online schools when I was in school is just the ability of like flexibility, where it's really easy to like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. I mean, a lot of my students, you know, they'll take a break for a term or two and then come back just because they need a break, where traditional school, it'd be really weird. Like if one of my classmates at Ringling had just like took a break for, you'd have to do a whole year. You couldn't just do a semester. It'd be really weird. Like I never saw that ever. You always just assume something wrong, like something really bad happened. So the flexibility is not as easy. And it's hard to like work a job and go to traditional school. Like I did that and it was awful. I'd say some of the pros that I liked about the traditional school was like actually sitting right next to people that you were in school with. Like I learned tons from the people who sat next to me, more so than maybe the teachers, because we were all sitting there trying to solve similar problems. And you could like, ask someone a question and they can help you with something. And then they go, oh, wait, how'd you do that? And then you could show them and help them with that. So that collaboration was super beneficial. And then even just having to like, we had to present our work. Like we also did story stuff. So we had to present our work to the teachers, and that in itself was a huge learning experience, being able to pitch your ideas, sell your ideas, and just feel comfortable talking in front of people and not kind of being embarrassed or anything like that. So that was one of the, I think the biggest thing that I liked from traditional schools that I feel, at least for me, would be difficult at an online school, just because I don't do well with the whole like internet like friendship thing, like communicating like on like Discord chats or things like that. I'm so bad at that, but my guess is now like some younger people who grew up with that stuff all the time, it's probably like no big deal. It's like I didn't have a cell phone until 2010, 11, something like that. So like not a smartphone, just like a cell phone in general. So I'm not used to the tech internet communication stuff, but obviously I've done a lot more of it with AnimSchool because I have to go twice a week and talk to people. No one, I mean, as far as like your like them looking at your work, like no one cares. Like I remember Bue Sky, like I don't even think I ever looked at my resume when like they hired me. It was like years later, I started talking about how I was working I worked all these different places, and they're like, oh, we thought you came here like right out of school or something. What? No. So a lot of times they don't know, they just look at your work and that's all they really care about. I'd say the one advantage is, and I mean, it depends on what kind of person you are, but like the connection you make with people, especially in person, at least for me, was a little stronger. So there was that advantage where it's like, like when I started working here, I went to school with someone just for 1 year. We were about, I think for 1 or 2 years maybe. But we had like known each other in person, hadn't really spoken since school, but we still had like kind of an immediate, like, oh yeah, that's right. We remember each other. Whereas the online schools sometimes, especially if no one turns on their camera, like sometimes you might not feel like you know them as well. But as far as like the recruiters and the supervisors looking at your work, they couldn't care at all. They don't care one bit where you went to school. Doesn't matter. They might ask just out of curiosity, but that's it. Nothing else. So doesn't matter. I mean, I think it's just going to come down to kind of like what your priorities are and what you're comfortable with. Because if you're going to a traditional school, 4-year school that makes you do everything, you have to spend all your extra time focusing on, if it's animation, if it's modeling. If you don't do that, then yeah, just assume you're going to probably most likely have to sign up for AnimSchool after you graduate. So yeah, it's one of those things there's a lot of stuff you can learn at the 4-year school, but if you want to specialize and you don't focus on it in addition to your 4-year schooling, then yeah, you're probably just going to take another year doing online animation schools, I would say. I was too stubborn and I just kept working on my reel privately. I probably wasted like 3 years that I didn't need to if I had just gone to an online school afterwards, and I probably would have gotten there a lot quicker. Yeah, I mean, I chose AnimSchool because to like, you know, reach out about teaching, because it was the school that I always said I would take if I was going to take a school. And I kept saying like, okay, maybe next time I'll take a course, and that was going to be the school that I was going to take the course. And it really just came down from the work that I saw the students producing. I saw what they were producing, and I was like, okay, cool. I want my stuff to look like that. That's why I was choosing that school. And then when I was at Bue Sky, I knew quite a few guys who'd been a few animators who were teaching there, and talked with them about it. And they only had positive things to say about it. But as far as like compared to the other schools, I don't know, you know, I don't know enough about the other schools beyond just looking at their reels of what the students produce to know much more than that. I just think the AnimSchool animation that comes out is just cooler and better. I don't know enough about the other schools, but yeah, just like, hey, I like what they do, what the students are producing. So seems like that'd be a good fit on the same wavelength. Well, definitely no. Like you literally don't have to draw ever, technically. But I do think a lot of the skills that you get to practice and acquire from doing traditional art, observation skills, are super important. If you're not going to learn them through sort of drawing, specifically, mostly drawing, I think is the easiest one to go through. But if you're not going to learn those sort of critical eye/observational skills through a traditional art form, you need to find a different way to learn those skills, because you have to have them. You can't just kind of do whatever. You have to really, you know, look at what you're producing, look critically at your reference, look critically at all the work around you to be able to make decisions on what to do. But I do think they're helpful. I think doing, you know, drawing, painting, sculpture can be very helpful for you know, improving your animation. I think last night in my lecture, well, no, we're doing critiques, but I brought up how you can get different, how you want your motion to have different variety. And I brought up some, I guess, contemporary dance, and showed them how you can have different speeds and textures and rhythms and patterns to your motion to get more variety and to sell different emotions. So even art forms that aren't, you know, on paper or canvas are helpful for animation, like dance and music, rhythm, all those kind of things. So, but not necessary. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to just animate as much as possible. And I mean, it goes with anything you're trying to learn. Like if you don't do it, you're not gonna learn it. So I think not every shot has to go on your demo reel. I mean, that's kind of the tough thing in animation. It takes a long time. So I feel like you want to get your time's worth. So you want it to go on your reel. But you know, just if you every moment you spend thinking about maybe starting that next shot is just less time you get to work on the shot. So it's like when you have your idea, just get started with it. You don't have to, you know, finish your blocking past that first day. In fact, you probably shouldn't. You should probably start with some planning. But at least when you think of it, start planning it out. Just start it, do it, and don't wait for the whole idea to be perfect in your head. Start doing some thumbnails, start shooting some reference, start sketching out some ideas for your layout. And just to take the pressure off yourself, just know that all you're trying to do is learn one more thing on the shot, and it doesn't have to be, every shot doesn't have to be a demo reel shot. You know, every other art form, they do practices, you know, painters go out and do little sketches. They do, you know, pencil sketches, marker sketches, color sketches that aren't the final piece. A lot of times they're just practice. They just go out and do it. Animation, we seem to only do like final performances. You know, it's like we don't have, you know, animation sketchbooks. We just go and do the final piece. So don't be afraid to do some animation sketchbook stuff, because the goal is to get better, you know, not just make amazing demo reel pieces. But I try and emphasize in my classes, not necessarily teaching them like these steps of what to do, like, you know, how to draw a cat kind of ideas, but it's more about trying to get them to kind of understand these conceptual ideas that apply to every shot after that. So I'm not going to say, here's how you pose out an angry face. I'm going to go over more about how can I structure my face to read clearly and look appealing. You know, go over some basic things of like, you know, of course, like angry brows are going to be down and kind of crunch in and push in, but we're going to spend more of our time talking about, you know, how to make an appealing face pose, how to make that look good and feel, you know, believable, versus like always do this with a blink, you know, instead of saying, okay, always go 2 frames down and 3 frames up on a blink. Just make sure to get some variety. That's what's going to keep your blink from feeling mechanical. We're going to go faster down, then we go up. So it's more of a conceptual thing. So it can bend and sort of change depending on the needs. Because sometimes you can have a blink, you know, go up, you know, a lot slower. But if you have it go down the same speed as it goes up, it's going to feel really mechanical. So trying to think of things more in concepts and ideas than like, this is how it's done. It's done A, B, C, because that's only going to help you for that one shot instead of down the road on every shot. Obviously, that doesn't work for everything. Sometimes things are just A, B, C as well. So, I mean, I think one thing that I've learned is like, don't be afraid to get up out of your chair and go talk to people. Because one, you're just going to learn from what they might have to say. By going up and talking to them, you might see what they're working on, or they might explain something to you, or you know, you might all of a sudden realize you have a question you can ask them. But also developing sort of some kind of social relationship with the people around you is just going to open up doors and opportunities to be able to discuss more animation and get help from people. You know, if you kind of just sit in your chair and never get up, you're never going to get any help from anyone else, or vice versa. Sometimes helping someone else out is going to give you a lot of, you know, tell you a lot about kind of where you're at in your animation. And sometimes like I explain stuff in class and I go, hey, that is a good point. I didn't think of that, even though I just said it, but I hadn't really thought of it much. Or sometimes my students will say something, I go, that's a good point. I haven't really thought of it like that. It's can be really helpful. So that same kind of concept goes for your supervisors. Definitely, I think, you know, obviously, you know, they're your boss, so there's some little difference, but the animation world's rather pretty chill and relaxed. So it's like, you know, I recommend just treating them like they're your friend. Be cool, conversational, polite. You know, it doesn't have to be just, okay, I'm here for my notes. What do I need to do? Okay, thanks, bye. You know, go up, you know, ask them a question, say something. Don't just, you know, treat them like a real person, a real friend. Because yeah, the more comfortable they feel with you, I think the better notes you're going to get, the more ability to have a discussion you're going to be able to have with your supervisors, which I think that's where you really learn from your supervisors, when you can have a discussion about stuff instead of just put the arm here, put the hand here, blah, blah, blah. And then I guess the last bit of advice I would give is a little more like specific, but especially when you're getting notes from directors. I don't know what I'd call this, but it's when you're up next to do your notes, sit up in your chair, got your little pad, write down, sit up on the edge of your chair, and just let them talk and go, cool. Yeah, awesome. Write it down. Awesome. Great. Write it down. And then if you have any questions to clarify, you can ask. Like, hey, you said this, want to clarify X, Y, Z. The worst thing you can do is sit there and go, okay, yeah, but. Like anytime you're saying but in a director review, you're basically saying like, I know you barely finished saying that note, but I'm already telling you I don't like it. And that's the last thing they want to hear is like, because they already have a million people telling them what to do. They don't want to hear every 100 whatever animators telling them what they should be doing. So just let them say what they want. If you want clarification or have questions, let them finish, ask at the end. And if there's a real dispute, like conflict, like, hey, me and the soups, we were trying to achieve this. Is that not reading, or you just don't want that? And they'll be able to say, oh, well, that's what you're trying to do. Oh, well, if you're trying to do that, then yes, do it. Or no, I don't want that at all. But try to avoid going, but, because that's just, I don't know. I think a lot of directors get they don't like that too much. And a happy director will make a happy animator. My tip for demo reels, and I don't know, maybe people don't like this tip, but my tip is to just do work that you like do the work that you want to do for your job, do the style, do the kind of shots you want to do, and do them well. And and then just apply to all the jobs. And the people that like your reel are going to be the people that creatively are in the same boat as you. So you're going to enjoy the job more than if you were in a boat where you were creatively in two different worlds. Because that's one thing I felt like I was surprised to find out. Like, Pixar makes amazing films, but not everyone's going to like it there. Not everyone's going to like every studio. Some people are going to feel like they fit in better, their work fits the style better, connects with the directors and the supervisors better. So I always recommend for a reel, it's like only put your best stuff in there, and make sure, like, don't try and this kind of contradicts what a lot of people say, but a lot of people say like to tailor your reel to the job you're applying for. If you just want a job, you don't care if you're going to like it or not, you're willing to take that risk, you just need a job, yes, tailor your reel. But if you're looking for a job that you want to make sure that you really connect with and you're going to enjoy and not feel like you're struggling, just do what you like to do and put that on your reel. But definitely try to make sure all your shots look the same quality, because I know some supervisors I've talked to, when they watch a reel, they just look at it and they're looking for the worst shot, and then that's all they're going to pay attention to. They're going to ignore everything else and they're only going to look at your worst shot, because they're just like, okay, well, like, they're going to give me like nothing less than this. But if they only look at your best shot, then it's like, well, this might not always be their best thing. So some supervisors like to find the worst shot and base their decisions off everyone's worst shot on their reel. So don't give them a worse one. Make them have a hard time deciding which one's your worst one. Yeah, because if you ask almost everyone in the industry and you say, what was your favorite project you worked on? It's almost never like the coolest film. It's just the one that they felt the most. It was just kind of like, it just was smooth and enjoyable. Like for me, it was Ferdinand, because me and Carlos creatively, for some reason, we were just like mentally on the same page. Like it was almost like I show him something and he could like say 2 words, like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I got it. and yeah, where, you know, other people, they didn't like the production because they're like, I have no idea what he wants. So it depends on like creatively if you have that. And I've had that at other studios where I was struggling so hard to figure out what the heck do you want? And I see these other guys who loved it there, who are having so much fun, just like, again, like knew exactly what everyone wanted. I'm like, what? So it really, yeah, once the honeymoon phase of the job wears off, yeah, your day-to-day ease is really gonna be essential to your enjoyment of the job. I mean, when I was a student, I was staying up till like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Now it's like I'm done at 6 or whatever, you know. And if I do, maybe I've been fortunate that all the studios I've worked at, overtime has never been mandatory. It's just been, if you'd like to do 5 extra hours a week, 10 extra hours a week, you are more than welcome to, but it was never required. Only a couple instances where they said like, hey, like just for these couple days, we need you to finish this thing up. Whereas school, it was every day, every day. I mean, I was like falling asleep. Like when I finish at work, I'm done. I don't have to think about it until the next day. I mean, like I want to say it's good to be organized, but it feels weird to say that since I'm not organized. And if anyone's seen any of my demos, I think whenever I demo something, the first thing that's said when I finish is, you can just do that. Like you can just put the thing over there, or you can just slide that around. So I don't worry too much about technical stuff, mostly because I don't like technical stuff, so I just ignore it. But I think it can be helpful if you're a little organized, but my mentality is, if I'm worrying about technical stuff, then that's time, like worry energy that I'm not using on the image in front of me. And I want to put all my care and thought and concerns into the image in front of me and nothing else. So if I'm thinking, oh, well, if I do that pose, it's going to kind of break the rig, but now I don't have the best pose. So what's more important? Having the best pose possible or not breaking the rig? I'm sure sim artists and tech anim would have a different answer for that question. Yeah, so I mean, for the longest time, as far as like breaks from animation, you know, like when I'm at work, I like to go and see what everyone's up to and stuff. You know, when we were working more in the office and stuff. But you know, back in the day, did painting, drawing, sketching, some art forms that were not animation related. But now I've started to do non-art related things. And I mean, when you start animating for a while or doing one thing for a long time, it's good to get out and just sort of, you know, branch out into different aspects of the world. So, and you know, it can kind of open your mind to new ideas. So, for example, earlier we talked about dance and how it relates to animation. And like for me, I wouldn't have made that connection if I had not done animation or done dance previously before doing animation. So I think branching out and doing different things that are not animation and even maybe not even art can help you kind of get it under, like help with your animation just by having a broader scope of the world and in life, and you can kind of see how things can improve, you know, your understanding of animation. And then also, you know, you don't want to get burned out. So doing other things that you enjoy outside of animation that doesn't have the same stress that you might get from trying to be the best animator ever, it can alleviate that potential issue for burning out, which is super important when you plan to animate for like 30 years.